Hey YouTube, this is my quick review of the Air Jordan 29 Hare colorway. I'm first going to talk about three aspects of the shoe: support, cushioning, and finally traction. I've had these shoes for probably a couple of months, and I think that initially, after playing with them, I was actually unimpressed compared to the 28s, which actually featured zoom units in the forefoot and the heel, and I actually thought these shoes were a little bit clunky. But I think after at least 3 or 4 runs in them, they've finally kind of broken in, and now I'm starting to understand why people really enjoy these shoes. First off, let's go over support. The upper is Nike's Flyknit, or I guess performance weave is what they're calling it. It's a much higher resolution thread count, I suppose, and there seems to be some kind of glue involved, but it's not as apparent as, let's say, the true Flyknit runners that don't have any glue whatsoever. This seems to be somehow attached to some kind of backing. But anyway, I think in general they're very comfortable. They're very pliable at the top here. My one concern initially, and it's still really an issue, is the dead space in the toe box, which I understand the 29 lows have sort of addressed. And so what happens is that at least a few times when I was playing, I noticed that I'll feel my toes kind of moving in here, and what I'll end up doing is cinching up the laces, which was fine and good, except that it didn't really solve the issue with the toe box. And so I think if you wear much thicker socks like the Nike Elite brand, you might get away with running true to size. For folks who have wider feet, may not have so much of an issue with the dead space. But overall, I think the fit is relatively good. You know, Nike's really funny that way. I think they have, you know, if you purchase their top of the line basketball shoes, they're always kind of running kind of off in terms of sizing, I feel. For example, you know, if you wear 9.5s in Kobe's, or you get the KDs, there's always going to be some issues with either the shoes are too narrow or too wide. So my suggestion would be to actually try on a pair and see what you think. And then my second point on support is this upper in terms of durability. So here's my right shoe that as I was playing defense, I think the opponent stepped on my foot, and you can see that this little scuff here, and you can see the fabric's actually pulling away, and you can actually see the thread count, or the separation of the threads after 1 or 2 plays, such as like up here. I'm not sure if this is an issue for all the colorways, because I know the weave is slightly different in terms of texture, but this happened after getting the shoes after a first game, and it was kind of disheartening, because you know you're going to spend $225 retail for these shoes, and for it to get that badly scuffed in the first run, it's kind of disappointing. And I've heard rumors or stories of the lace locks busting open and stuff, and I think a lot of that is because people are cinching up their shoes to get the fit up here to kind of eliminate the dead space here, and so maybe they're putting a little bit extra more strain on the lace locks. Overall though, I think there's a lot of padding on the inside, which makes it really comfortable. The heel counters on the inside, there's some kind of heel counter here that kind of gives you a good lockdown, supplemented by this external heel cup. I think they seem to be pretty sufficient without adding too much weight or bulk to the overall shoe. So my next point would be cushioning. Coming off the Jordan 28s, I guess I was initially really disappointed that they, at the price point, they weren't able to include two sets of zoom units in the forefoot and the heel. I think partly because they've kind of bored down on the heel cup here, or the heel part of the sole, and there might be an issue with just not having enough space to have a zoom unit in there, even though I think they would probably be able to get away with some low profile zoom. But anyway, you know, they have this flight speed or flight plate system that is, I guess, it's not necessarily unique to the Jordan shoes in particular. I mean, I think the Melos have the same thing, which is basically plastic, some sort of formed plastic, and they've added this extra foam in the midsole, or in the transition between the heel and the forefoot, to eliminate some of that clunkiness that maybe was apparent in the 28s, even though I disagree. I think the 28s were amazing. I never really noticed any kind of clunkiness, although I would have to say that the zoom units in the forefoot here definitely aren't as cushy as the 28s as far as I remember, and I think a lot of that has to do with having to increase the durability of the 29s by actually using much more durable rubber. And so the disadvantage of that is, of course, you lose some of that court feel and some of that response that you would get from a true unlocked zoom like in the 28s. And whatever foam they're using in the heel, I guess I don't have any complaints. I would prefer zoom, but they can't get it in there. Then it's, I mean, I guess that's on Nike. So now let's talk a little about traction. Again, I was a big fan of the 28's traction patterns. I initially was really skeptical of the 29 traction patterns, primarily because they've obviously went to a much harder durable rubber that is not nearly as pliable. I mean, it's really actually non-existent in terms of pliability. I know some colorways have a clear sole, which, you know, in general might have better traction on semi-dusty to clean courts. I play primarily on a semi-dusty court. It's not game ready, and I found that at least in two separate occasions, doing sharp cuts or quick change of directions, I actually hit the deck a couple of times, because I think whatever lack of traction on this edge, I tend to kind of use these parts of the shoe more than the rest of the sole, and this is just not sufficient, and I slipped and I fell, and which was disappointing again, because it was for, again, at this price point. I think, you know, Nike, I don't know why they always want to try and reinvent themselves. I can understand from a marketing perspective that you have to put out a product that's new and novel each time to kind of gain that public interest. But I think with the 28s, they could have just kept a similar pattern and maybe just changed the durability of the compound to make it less prone to the zoom units popping. And if you look at the traction on 29s, I think these kind of run parallel from forefoot to heel, and I thought that it might be actually better if they have it a little bit more perpendicular, because I mean, if you just feel this, there's really no kind of grippiness to them. Again, I do appreciate the fact that they have these outriggers. I do feel that the 29s have a little bit wider toe box, and so you feel a little bit more stable, so to speak, despite their pretty narrow heel. And again, like the traction right here, I think it's pretty useless. I don't think, I mean, unless you're completely flat-footed, I don't think you would really utilize any kind of traction here. I would, yeah, I'm not sure about the 30s that just got released, if they've actually changed the compound on the soles. I know that the the first colorway they've released has a clear sole, and so it'd be interesting if I could kind of find a pair of the 29s with a clear sole and kind of compare that with a solid sole to see if the traction is actually better, because I would prefer to have much better traction, I think, because you can have all the support and cushioning you want, but if your basketball shoes are like ice skates on the court, it's kind of moot. It's just no point, basically. So for a quick summary, I would like to say that the upper is really supportive and lightweight. There's a lot of padding in the heel, and you get really good lockdown with the internal heel cup and the external ones as well. Cushioning could be a lot better in terms of when comparing to the 28s, but I think it's definitely adequate. Traction again could also be better, but I think if you have access to cleaner courts, I think they'll do just fine. And I mean, in reality, the traction is actually adequate, I suppose. So I guess at the price point of $225, I would probably pass on these shoes because there are a lot of good shoes out there right now. But I got these at clearance. You know, I paid a little bit over $100. I was really curious to see how they've improved it over the 28s, and you know, at that price point, over $100, I think it's fine. I mean, you can do a lot worse for $100. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, and you could subscribe at my channel at AC Tech Reviews. Leave comments down below if you have any questions, comments, or any kind of shoes that you want me to review. You can also find me on Twitter at AC Tech Reviews. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.